Hey, what's up, everybody? I wanted to take a minute and welcome you to the Donut Shop podcast. I had a suggestion from somebody who watches the show and thought it was a good idea. I'm always open to suggestions about the show. And he mentioned that I never usually introduce myself or at least tell you about who I am. And with adding new fans or new viewers all the time, it might be a good idea to go over that. So, my name is Justin. I've been a police officer for 20 years. I'm actually getting ready for retirement. I'm going to retire and start doing this podcasting stuff full time. During my career, I've worked on road patrol. I've been a crisis negotiator. Did that for about 8 years. It was great training. Learned a lot about mental health and working with people. I was a school resource officer. I worked in the elementary school and then in the high school. I did that for 6.5 years. Then I also moved into the community resource unit and public information officer unit. So I did a lot of community engagement. I ran our social media for the department. And then I also spoke with the news. Kind of leads into this, even though I was a podcaster before I was in that unit. I've been doing podcasting since about 2012. I started with a soccer podcast with some friends for a local soccer team. We had a great time. It was a little different than this, obviously, but I was on the mic and doing that kind of stuff. Then eventually in 2020, started this podcast with a friend of mine, Nick, and he's no longer on the show, but the show drives on, and here we go. Basically, it's a cop sitting in a donut shop and someone interesting walks in. They don't always have to be law enforcement based. As a law enforcement officer, we know when we're in uniform, pretty much everybody comes up and talks to us. Especially when we're trying to take a break and eat dinner or eat a lunch or something like that. It's not usually a bother, and sometimes you get interesting stories out of it. So that's kind of where I created the premise for this podcast and what it is today. Now let's get into the episode.
Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Donut Shop podcast, where we talk with people who've worn the badge, paid the cost, and found the courage to speak their truth. Today's guest is Adam Meyers, a veteran police officer with more than 2 decades of service and a U.S. military police background. In 2016, Adam was involved in a deadly force incident inside a busy department store, a moment that changed the course of his life. What followed wasn't talked about enough. Years of self-destruction, silence, mental health struggles, substance abuse, and pain that he didn't know how to process. But through therapy, support, and resilience, Adam fought his way back and is now helping others to do the same. This episode is about the other side of the uniform, the human being, the trauma, the mistakes, the recovery, and the reminder that asking for help isn't weakness. It may be the strongest thing you ever do. So let's get into it. Welcome, Adam. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, so you're up in Wisconsin. Let's just get a little bit of your background. I kind of read off a bit of your background, but let's kind of get into it. When did you start your career, or at least even back to the military? You were just telling me a second ago about how you were in the military during the Y2K.
I was. I was 5 years active duty military police. I was stationed at Fort Bliss, Texas, which is in El Paso, Texas, close to the Mexico border. I started my career in law enforcement in the military. Yeah. After that, after 5 years of active duty, I moved back home to Racine, where I was born and raised, where it all started. That's where I wanted to be a cop. And the story behind that is, as far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a cop, wanted to be a police officer. And I lived on Highway 20, which is one of the main thoroughfares in and out of the city of Racine. And I would hear police cars, ambulances, fire engines go by the house. But I really wanted to see that cop car. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So I'd run up to the window, and when I'd see a police car go by, I'd call it an car, because of the siren. And parents, the first time I saw a police officer get out, I looked at them and I said, an car man. I want to be an car man. So I grew up and became an car man, a police officer. And after the military, I went back home to Racine, and I was lucky enough to get hired by the city of Racine, where it all started. It was a dream come true. So it was great. I still remember getting off my field training program. I'm driving my squad down in the downtown area of Racine, and the county buildings have these really big mirrored windows. And I remember looking over and I could see myself driving the squad, and I'm like, this is the freaking coolest thing in the world. And I'm actually doing it. So it was a dream come true.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, Racine, I know of Racine through League of Their Own. Only knowledge I have of that, the girls play baseball movie. They had a team, they had a baseball team in the movie. So I know of the idea in Wisconsin of where that is, but it's mostly not a huge city, but probably a medium-sized city, right? Like, and mostly farms.
Yeah, it had about 85,000 residents when I lived there, when I was, living there. And it's in between Chicago, Illinois, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It borders Lake Michigan to the east. So it's a pretty decent city. There's other communities around there like Mount Pleasant and Sturtevant and Caledonia that add to the population, but Racine was a pretty decent sized city.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, so a lot of work, a lot of police work for you going on, not sitting under a tree all day doing nothing. So you get pretty active.
Very active. I mean, I was a third shift patrol officer, evidence technician. There were some months that I was the paddy wagon. I'm not even sure if places have paddy wagons anymore.
I think some places do. Yeah, our friend. But I mean, one of our boys in Philly, he was a Philly cop and he drove the paddy wagon, but that's Philly. So, I mean, it's a huge city. Sure. I mean,
always something going on in Racine. I mean, there were gangs, there were drive-bys, there were homicides. I mean, I worked on a triple homicide where 7 people were shot, 3 were killed.
Wow.
There's there's always something to do. And if it wasn't happening, you could go out and find it because it was plenty of enough work. So it was there.
Yeah. So you were doing that and you kind of, I mean, I know through your bio and stuff that you gave me that you had your, you had an officer involved shooting. Were you the officer that pulled the trigger, or?
I was, and it wasn't in the city of Racine. I was married at the time, and we have 2 daughters, and I left the city after 5-6 years, and we moved about 3.5-4 hours up north to another community where I took a job as a police officer after our marriage broke up. I got divorced after 11 years, married to my high school sweetheart, all that great stuff. And we get along well now. I mean, at the time, going through divorce, it wasn't very smooth sailing, but now we're pretty cordial and we get along well. And our kids are adults, young women. Sydney Marie is 27. She's my oldest. Peyton Elizabeth is 24. And so we moved up north, and then we got a divorce, and that's when I got hired by the police department where my critical incident, my fatal shooting happened.
Oh, wow. Okay. So would you say, like, we talked a little bit earlier about kind of the career and stuff. And I know, for me, I've worked 20 years with the same police department and I'm about to retire, but, you worked 5 years with Racine and then you moved to another one. Do you find that in hindsight as something that was beneficial, or, like maybe a decision that you were using because of your family or because of the job? Like why'd you move with 5 years on?
The biggest decision was family. It was also because I started becoming really callous to the job. I mean, I was a third shift evidence technician. I would go to the homicides, and I remember specifically what call I was on when I started feeling just kind of like callous, like this, I'm just doing my job and this is just another dead body. I remember there was a shooting at a bar, and I parked my squad behind the bar and came into the side of the bar with my gear and put my evidence collection stuff down. And I looked to the right, and there's a man that was shot, and he's, deceased, laying in the doorway of a bathroom. And I'm like, oh, okay, just another body. Let's get to work. Let's do what we have to do. And I remember after, I'm thinking, that's just not another body. That's somebody's son, maybe somebody's dad. And a lot of people are like, well, if he was a gang member, it kind of comes with the territory, that might happen. But then I'm thinking, I just started becoming numb to that stuff and more calloused. And then some of the shootings were happening closer to where I lived. And I'm thinking, it's getting a little too close to home. And then I just started looking for jobs and found a job up north and went up there and was a police officer up there for 14 years. A year after my shooting, I got promoted to the police department's very first detective. So I enjoyed doing that. But, this whole woulda, coulda, shoulda, I look back and I'm like, man, if I would have stayed in Racine, where would I have been? What would I have done? Because it was a bigger agency, but I don't have any regrets. I took a lot of the experience that I had from Racine, that bigger city, that bigger police department. And I think it helped me at the police department where I had my critical incident.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we even say locally, for me, that there's a few cities in our area. I'm a suburb of Fort Lauderdale, so we've got Fort Lauderdale, but there's a couple other cities that are nearby that, like we recently had a guy come over that worked a year in that city, and we're like, dude, it's like 2 to 3 years worth of experience in ours. So, like he's coming in with a year under his belt, but in our terminology, it's a couple years worth of police work with the amount of calls, with the style of calls that they run in that city. So, he's got more of the shootings, more of the homicides, more of the critical incident type based calls as a 1 year officer that some of our guys, knock on wood, may not see for 3 years sometimes, which is good, but right. You can only do that for so many years. But we're like, all right, cool. He can come in and he can just take off running. So it's good. It's good for us.
I totally get that, because after my shooting, a lot of guys that I kept in contact with down in the Racine area, they said, "Yeah, I bet you never thought that would happen up there. Maybe down here in Racine in the Milwaukee area, but never up there." And they were right. I mean, it was more of like country, rural. I mean, that police department was located between two other communities that had large populations too, but I never thought it would happen. I mean, it can happen anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're a one officer department or if you have 220 police officers, like at the time when I worked for Racine we had. So, I mean, something like that can happen anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, we all carry a firearm. We're all, sworn to protect. We're, called to the some people's worst days. And we're, especially like just this week, building up to Thanksgiving, we're like, I worked Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and it's like, oh, here we go. Here comes all the, people are starting to get in town and they're having domestics. They're coming to visit family. And it's the first night, because I ended up pulling 6 hours overtime in addition to my shift after my shift. And it's like, oh, and then everybody trying to cram into the last few minutes of the mall before they, have a day off. And then the Black Friday starts. So they're trying to see if they can catch any deals before Black Friday, so they don't have to come out during Black Friday. So it's like, all right, this is a little bit of the uptick. We had a bit of a lull at the beginning of the week because the kids were all out of school. And I feel like, unlike years ago when the kids were out of school and they were burglarizing houses, now they're just in there playing video games,
right.
Or on their phones. They're not outside, which they were all off of school. Which I'm okay with, I guess, at least from a police officer that doesn't feel like, that's in the twilight of my career and doesn't feel like handling in progress burglaries anymore. We didn't have to deal with them, thankfully, this week. But yeah, I mean, Thanksgiving and stuff, these holidays, somebody asked me, I think last night, they said, what do you think's a bigger holiday for police calls? And I said, I feel like Thanksgiving more than Christmas, just since we're in this holiday season, because Thanksgiving's more based around family getting together and eating a meal, and talking. Whereas Christmas is just, becomes more commercialized and is more just about, what presents did you get? And then the family all disappears and starts playing with their presents or whatever. So in my opinion, less opportunity to start arguments or fighting. But as a cop, we deal with problems on both holidays when we just want to be home.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you worked for that agency for 14 years, and you otherwise good agency to work for, or
yeah, I wish I could still be there. I mean, I really enjoyed working there. I enjoyed the people I worked with. I enjoyed the community. After a year after my shooting, being promoted to the first detective, in my career, I never thought I'd be a detective. And then I had this opportunity and I figured, yeah, give it a shot, and there were 3 of us that went for the position, and I was the one who got it. So I was pretty excited about that, and was a detective there until I was terminated.
So well, you drop a little carrot there. So what's an agency like that doesn't have a detective? What are the officers? I guess every officer is basically a detective, or you're filing all your cases, you're doing all your, because with my agency, I write we're an agency of like 190, and we write a police report, try to get as much information as possible, try to do statements, now that we have body cams and stuff. So we pause or stop the video and start it over for a statement, and we flag it later so the detectives get to see it. But we don't file any cases as like a road patrol officer, that kind of stuff. So essentially I'm like a glorified secretary,
Okay. Yeah.
I might make an arrest,
Right. No, that's kind of like how it was in Racine. I mean, we'd go to the initial complaint, collect as much information as we possibly could, write a brief incident report, and then it would go on to the investigators or the detectives. But where I worked initially, before having a detective, the officers were involved in everything. They were involved in responding to the complaint, collecting all the information, investigating it, doing all the follow-ups, making all the phone calls, calling everybody in for interviews, reaching out to other agencies for their assistance. I mean, you name it. So It was just something we were used to for years. I mean, I didn't get promoted. We didn't have a detective until 2017. And that was, I think, 9 years after I got hired at that police department. So we were just used to that. And it was still a fun job. It was still interesting because it kind of sharpened your skills because you had to do everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes
you got a different experience for sure.
Right. And so, it was frustrating at times because, you may be working on a call, on a complaint, and then you have to stop because you get another call coming in and then another one coming in, and they start stacking up. But, that's just kind of like how police work is, no matter what you're doing. And other agencies around us, they had investigators, or they would have a detective bureau, and they would have people that are dedicated to that stuff all the time. And, we didn't. So, I mean, that was frustrating, but it did. We learned a lot. And I think it made us better cops because we had to do everything. And
I would completely agree. We have a county just north of us that a guy came in to us when I first was a new guy, and he's like, "You mean you guys don't file misdemeanors yourself?" And I'm like, "No, bro." I'm like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." And he's like, "Oh yeah, at Palm Beach County, we filed misdemeanors, and it was our job to do that." And I was like, "Oh no, I just put it in a file tray and on to the next one," and so we're definitely very lucky. And I make sure to explain that to new guys for sure. All right, well, I'll drop in a little commercial, but when we get back, you dropped a carrot of getting fired, which is a big carrot. And then obviously you had your critical incident with this agency. So, let's start to get into that, and we'll peel apart this onion a little bit and see where we're going. So we'll be right back. Yo, what's up, guys? I want to do a follow-up. I used to run an ad or commercial for my friends at HPTRT, Human Performance, talking about like testosterone therapy or, all that kind of stuff. I finally I've been using it. I've been, a member of the program for over 6 months now. I got my second round of labs, and I'm going to be upfront and honest with you. When I first was tested, I was at 330. I'm a 43-year-old man, and my test was at 330. I didn't even go through the injections. I'm going through a couple different types of prescription pills that they have to help me out. All legal, all on the up and up. But after this 6 months, my test has gone up to 910. As somebody who works out 3 to 4 times a week, wants to stay young, wants to stay healthy with all this stuff. It's helped with all kinds of stuff, like my focus, continuing to get me like the best sleep that I've ever gotten. I've enjoyed it. So go over to hp-trt.com and check it out. You can bring, if you've had lab work within the last 6 months, you can bring your own lab work and they'll start you up. If you haven't, then you pay for the lab work through them. Or you can just go to your own doctor and do your lab work through your normal insurance, which I'm sure has a zero copay, if anything. And use the code DSP20, and that'll get you 20% off forever, as long as you're a member, as long as you use Human Performance. So it's a great program, good people over there. So go ahead and get it done. And if you've been thinking about it, or if you've looked at recent tests in your testosterone and you want a boost of that kind of stuff, get into it, because you can also get the testosterone through them as well as peptides and other things. So DSP20 will get you 20% off. Good luck. Yo, what's up, everybody? I want to let you know I have a new website format. Same website, donutshoppodcast.com, but this time I'm running it through Shopify. Make it much easier to purchase items, because aside from the hats that I have up there, Donut Shop Podcast, PVC hats, the blue line snapback, laser mesh, nice and clean on the inside, comfy hats. I have some other swag, t-shirts, can koozies, just some other stuff that I put up there. I'm running the website through Shopify, and so it'll make it real easy for you guys to go on and purchase some stuff and support the show. So thanks for tuning in and following the show. And don't forget, donutshoppodcast.com. Thanks. All right, we're back. And so I mean, obviously fire happened later, but let's start to get into some of this stuff. Tell me about the critical incident and sort of, what happened. And then that's, kind of basing around what the rest of this conversation really goes to, is the mental health side of things and how stuff can affect all of us as police officers. And then also, so any of the civilians or regular, the normies that are that watch my show, kind of get an insight into, law enforcement officers and some of the stuff that we deal with.
Sure. My critical incident happened on Friday, April 8th, 2016, about 5:15 p.m. I was sitting at the police department working on a retail theft report from a retail store called Shopco. It doesn't exist anymore, but just typing up my retail theft report when I was dispatched to our Walmart store. And it wasn't a very emergent call at all. Basically, dispatch wanted me to respond to Walmart and assist two chaperones with somebody who was refusing to leave the store. This person was named Melissa. She was a mental health patient at one of the state mental health facilities in a jurisdiction next to us. And it's my understanding that she was out on a good behavior pass. They had went over to Culver's, a restaurant right across the street from Walmart. When they were done there, they went over to Walmart and did some shopping. So it wasn't a very emergent call. And so I grabbed my laptop, walked out of the back of the police department, jumped in my squad car and started responding, not lights and sirens, just regular speed. And it initially came in as a 911 hang-up call. One of the chaperones contacted 911 and then hung up. And then our dispatch center called them back and then kept them on the line and basically gave me a play-by-play as to what was going on inside Walmart. And it started becoming more and more emergent. Dispatch advised me that Melissa was walking, in the sporting goods section. She was trying to remove a knife from the packaging, and then ultimately she removed the knife from the packaging. It ended up being a hatchet. It wasn't a knife. Not that a knife would have been any less threatening, but it ended up being a hatchet. I didn't find that out until I got there. But once I heard that she was in possession of a knife and that she was walking around the store and threatening customers, that's when I started stepping it up, turned on my emergency lights and sirens and started responding to Walmart at a higher rate of speed. Now, Walmart was I'd say probably about 1.5 miles away from the PD. It wasn't that far away. And I remember pulling into the parking lot, and there was a lot of people in the parking lot, but nobody would get out of the way.
It's everybody's up their own, doing their own business.
Yeah, everybody's doing their own thing. Some of them are looking at the squad like, ooh, look at the police car. I wonder what's going on. I'm thinking, will you please move? There's really an emergency in the store. And, all Walmarts are usually set up the same way. You have the general merchandise entrance, and then you have the grocery entrance. But around the corner from the general merchandise entrance is the auto center, where you can get new tires on your car, oil changes, stuff like that. And right back in by the tire center, the auto center, is the automotive department and the sporting goods section. And
Because they
initially,
put all the guys' stuff in the corner of Walmart because
right.
they know the dudes are going to be working on their car, and then they need to just go into the sporting goods section.
Yep, just go right in and go back there and leave us alone, right? So,
Yeah.
But initially, I was going to respond through the auto center because I thought that she was going to be back in sporting goods, and my intention was to keep her isolated back there so she wouldn't walk to the front of the store. Hopefully, I'll be able to, stop whatever threat there and keep everybody safe. But while I was responding, they said she's walking towards the front of the store and she's threatening customers. So what I did was I drove right towards the general merchandise entrance because I kind of pictured the inside of Walmart or her walking down kind of the tools and this area and over by, lawn and garden and stuff like that. So I parked right in front of the general merchandise entrance. And what I did is I turned my sirens off, but I left my lights going because I was hoping that if anybody
Code 2. Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody would
like a code
come to
2,
Walmart and they'd see the police car and they think maybe I shouldn't go through those doors.
Yeah.
So I exited my squad. I drew my weapon right away because I had no idea where she was. I knew she was walking towards the front of the store. She could have met me right inside the doorway. She did not, but there was a man and a woman there. And I asked, where is she? And they pointed down one of the main aisles towards the health and beauty and the lawn and garden aisle. It's kind of a main aisle intersection. And I ran down there, and that's when I made contact with her for the first time. I saw her back. Her back was facing towards me, and she was making this kind of chopping, hacking motion, and she was chopping up bags of weed and feed that were on this pallet. So I identified myself, and that's when she turned and faced me. And then I realized that's not a knife, that's a hatchet. And I gave her multiple verbal commands to stop, to drop the hatchet. She kept advancing towards me. She wouldn't listen to me. She wouldn't drop the hatchet. And then finally I decided to shoot, and I shot her twice. One round went in and out of her right leg, and that round continued down the aisle, and it struck the door, the sliding door in the lawn and garden department. So it's very good that nobody was, behind her. And the other round hit her kind of like right here in the sternum, and then she fell to the ground. And I know when I pulled the trigger that changed everything. I mean, I understand the totality of it. I remember the gunshots being so loud, especially inside a building. People don't realize how loud gunshots really are inside a building. And kind of reminded me of like broken speakers. And I remember after pulling the trigger, I got on the radio and I advised dispatch that shots were fired and to start rolling an ambulance. And then I started looking at some of the customers that were there. And I said, please check yourself. Please check each other, because I wanted to make sure that my rounds only struck her and nobody else. And then there was a Walmart employee, and I said, please get on the intercom and ask for a doctor or a nurse, anybody that can, come over here and help. And there just happened to be a nurse right around the corner in the light bulb aisle. And she's like, I'm a nurse. And she came over and helped until the ambulance arrived. And, I never thought she was going to die. She was a bigger woman. I think she was 25 years old. And when she was on the ground, she was talking to paramedics. She was answering questions. It just never crossed my mind that she would die. And, Walmart didn't close the store. They pulled out these,
of course not.
Yeah, these big bright yellow accordion kind of fences, and they kind of cordoned off the area, but they still let customers shop. I started seeing customers reaching over asking, hey, can I get some of that shampoo and conditioner, some of that shaving cream? And they were giving it to them. And I don't know if they really needed to shut the whole store down, but I couldn't believe it. And
yeah, it's probably a bit surreal on that type of a scenario for sure. Like
it was. And that's the perfect word for it. It felt surreal. Everything felt surreal. And I knew what I had done. I knew I did the right thing. I never second guessed myself, but I shopped at that Walmart. I lived in that community, and I didn't go to work thinking, hey, I hope I go to Walmart and shoot somebody today.
No.
In law enforcement, there's a possibility that will happen probably not, but there's a possibility. But now this was my reality. This was really happening. And once everything was said and done at Walmart, my corporal brought me out of Walmart and into a squad car. And that was great because he was my field training officer when I first got hired at that police department. And it was good that he was there because it was somebody I knew, somebody I trusted. Because like I said, everything was surreal, and it's important to have somebody there to kind of watch over you and kind of take care of you in a way. And he escorted me out of the store. We got in a squad, and almost immediately the media was there. I remember him saying, "Hey, check that out," and the media rolled into the parking lot. And I remember they came up to the passenger side window where I was sitting, and I don't remember what they said, but Corporal said something to him, and then we finally drove away and went back to the police department. And
were you sitting in the front seat or were you sitting in the back seat?
In the front seat
Okay.
passenger.
That's good. I'm just thinking of a PIO mentality of that. Like, God forbid that they're catching video of you sitting in the backseat of a police car. It might be, because a lot of us keep a lot of trash or personal effects in the front seat. So it's like, we can't, hey bro, if you don't mind, like if we're hopping somebody a ride somewhere, just slide in the back, even though it's the plastic seats and stuff. But,
right.
It may be something not uncommon for us, but God forbid the news caught you sitting in the backseat of a car, and it's like, this corporal or this police officer is shuttling another officer possibly and they start to make, I don't know, I'm starting to build your stress about the situation, which I've learned through PIO stuff is just, try to relieve or not give those opportunities for things like the news or the media to create that stress by, throwing another cop in the back seat. Also union stuff. Learn that through union stuff too. Like, don't ever get in the back seat, especially after a shooting, because it makes it look like you're guilty already or guilty of something wrong. So anyway,
and that very well could have happened if I was in the back seat, because they came up to the squad right away, passenger side front window, and started talking. And if I was in the back seat, that probably wouldn't have looked very, very good.
It could have painted a lovely picture for some dramatic news coverage for sure. So
sure.
Yeah. So this 25-year-old, otherwise lovely young lady, we're waiting to hear more about what may have been going on. But this cop, anyways, I'm painting a news media picture for you.
Right.
So
yeah. So, I mean, we went back to the police department. I remember sitting in the conference room, and the Professional Police Association showed up, the representatives, the attorneys, the village attorneys. Everybody was very supportive. Everything continued to feel surreal. And I remember I was so thirsty. I couldn't drink enough water. I couldn't drink enough Powerade water. And it didn't matter how much water I was sucking down. I was still thirsty. It was just unbelievable. Nothing quenched my thirst. And they did take my gun. And that's common. That's protocol. They do that. And once everything was said and done at the police department, they said I could go home. And I had a take-home squad car, and somebody brought my squad car back from Walmart. And, I was in full uniform with no gun. I didn't have a replacement gun. And when they said I could go home, I was thinking, okay, I'm going home. And I walked out the back of the police department, and I jumped in my squad car. And before I started driving home, because I lived in that community, I thought to myself, I have to call my mom and dad. My mom and dad lived about 3.5, 4 hours away. I need to let them know what happened, because I didn't want them to find out on social media or the news or a text message or anything like that. So, I reached up into my visor where I kept my cell phone, and I looked at my cell phone, and there were 28 missed text messages or phone calls from all kinds of people, even people I went to the police academy with years ago that I never really kept in contact with. So I thought that was cool. They were checking on me. They wanted to make sure I was okay. I don't know how they got my phone number, but we're all cops. We can figure that out.
It's interesting about how word travels. Word travels in the community for sure. I mean, I know sometimes if I have friends that are in fireman group chats, and you will find a lot of information out quick through a fireman group chat, because the one guy's on a rescue truck that's transporting an injured officer or an injured bad guy or that kind of thing, and boom, that group chat lights up, and then all of a sudden it just whoosh, knowledge
Oh yeah.
grows.
Yeah.
So the thin blue line is a telephone service, apparently.
Well,
You
and a
know,
lot of people even told me, they said they knew I was on duty and they were watching the news and they saw every other officer that was on duty, but they were like, "Where's Adam?" So either
oh,
Adam was hurt or he was the officer involved in the shooting or something. So they started reaching out, which made me feel good.
yeah,
But I called my mom and dad, and my mom answered the phone, and she was all happy because her baby boy is calling her, and she lives so far away. And I said, "Hi, mom, is dad there?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Can you please get him on the phone?" And he got on the phone. He's like, "Yo," he's happy because I'm calling
yeah,
too. And I just said, I want to let you know that I was involved in a shooting at work. I shot somebody. I'm okay, but I want to let you know right away. Um, and then later on, I don't know, a couple of weeks, I don't remember what the time frame was, my mom said, Adam, when you called, I could tell that you weren't okay. I mean, you're my baby boy. I could tell there was something wrong in your voice. I didn't really recognize it, but you sounded like you were in shock. You said you were okay, but I could tell you weren't. And but after we had that phone call, I drove home, and I don't remember the drive home. I could tell you probably the route I took home because I would take it every shift at the end of my
yeah,
shift, but I don't remember. It's a blur. And what I do remember is I do remember pulling into my driveway, getting out of my squad and walking into my house. And I was divorced and have two daughters. And at the time, my daughters were with my ex-wife, and nobody was there. I didn't have a girlfriend, significant other. I didn't have a roommate. The house was empty. I was all by myself, and I was okay with that. But I walked in, and the first thing I did was I knelt down next to my love seat, and I prayed to God that Melissa wouldn't die. I didn't want her to die, and like I said earlier, I didn't think she was going to, because the last I saw her, she was talking to paramedics and answering questions. It just didn't. I know when you shoot somebody, it's a possibility they could die, but it just didn't. I just didn't think she was going to. And then, after I prayed, I went into my bedroom and I took all my gear off and I sat at the foot of my bed. And even with all my gear off, I felt so heavy. And I just sat there for a little bit. And then once I was done with that, I ordered a pizza, like double bacon, double sausage, large pizza. And I turned the news on and I wanted to see what they were talking, talking about the shooting, talking about me. And I was told, don't turn on the news. And,
yeah,
hey, I know better than the professionals, right? I'm going to watch TV, see what's going on. And I watched the news for a little bit, and then I went to bed, and I slept well. I didn't have any problems falling asleep. I didn't have flashbacks, nightmares, bad dreams, anything like that. I slept like a rock. And the only, I don't know. I don't know if it has something to do with the adrenaline dump.
yeah,
I slept great. And when I woke up in the morning, it was Saturday morning, and I thought to myself, I need to do something normal, if that's even possible after you shoot somebody. And
yeah,
my thought was, I'm going to go get a haircut, because believe it or not, every week I get a haircut. It's just kind of my thing, because I'm used to always going to court and getting subpoenaed at the last minute, and I don't want to look all jacked up going to court or anything. So I'm like,
yeah,
I'm going to go get my haircut. Then I'm going to go pick up my kids. So I'm walking out to my car, and my chief calls me. And it was the typical, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing good, chief. How are you?" "Good." And he asked, "When can you come in and see me?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go get my haircut and go grab my kids, and then I'll come in and see you." And he said, "Well, I didn't want to do this over the phone, but he told me that Melissa had died." And I respect him for doing that, because the reason why he did it was the same reason why I called my parents right away, because Chief wanted me to find out right away, and not through a text message or social media or the news, or even get
yeah,
confronted by the media or something. And he wanted me to be aware of it. And I appreciate that. I respect his decision, to do that. But I remember getting off the phone and I'm thinking, this changes everything. What's going to happen now? I killed somebody. She's dead. I just didn't shoot somebody. Now she's dead. I took somebody's life. And I did go drive and get my haircut. I barely remember sitting in the chair getting my haircut. I didn't end up going to get my two daughters. My ex-wife kept them. And then I did go and speak to the chief. And I remember sitting and speaking with the chief. The chief told me that we're going to get ahead of this. We're going to be very transparent. I'm going to release your name and your police department photo. And, I was thinking a million things at the time, but the one thing I was thinking about is that police picture is my fat picture. And I the turkey neck, my uniform's tight. And I'm thinking, I don't want that thing out on the internet. And because once it's released, everybody's going to see it forever. And I even remember asking the chief, can you give me an hour so I can take that picture and kind of thin it up and make it look better? And he's like, Adam, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But that just
I used to take those pictures for my department, and I used to remind everybody, and it would almost make them give me a better smile. When I'd say, I go, remember guys, you could get Officer of the Year, or you could shoot somebody or get arrested. And this is going to be the photo we give. And they all of a sudden go, and they give me like some better photo than like a mean mug or something like that. Cause I'm like, obviously we don't want the worst, but, I go, just remember, this is the photo that gets released by the department. And they're like, oh yeah. You're not just putting in the annual report. So, I
mean, I like the uniform. It had like my instructor and FTO pin and some of my other awards. But I didn't like the way I looked in it. I mean, I was overweight. I mean, it was kind of tight fitting, and I knew that was going to be on the internet forever. And if you Google my name, you can find that picture, and I'm okay with it now, obviously, but that's what I was thinking. I was like, give me an hour so I can like doctor this thing up. And, but he released it. I obviously didn't do that. And then I had the weekend off, and cause I didn't need to go to the sheriff's department until that Monday to start the investigation into my shooting. And I don't remember that weekend. From the time when I left the chief's office till Monday, it's a blur. And, I see a therapist now, and we've even talked about that. And it's just not up there. I don't remember what I did. But I do remember Monday driving to the sheriff's department. And for some reason, I thought that there wasn't going to be any video of the shooting or any recording. And I don't know why I thought that, but that's what I was worried about. And another thing I was really worried about was, what if there is video and I'm watching the video and it's not what I remember? What if it's completely different than I remember? And once I got there, some of the sheriff investigators were there, and everybody was supportive. Everybody was great. And one investigator said to me, or said to kind of the group, and I don't think he was being sarcastic. I think it's just the way I took it. But he said something like, "Oh, we have video." And right away I'm thinking, what does that mean? And it got me really worried, kind of like, what does that mean? What happened? Is it going to be different than what I remember? But once we sat down and started reviewing that stuff, it was exactly how I remember. There was a lot of stuff that I don't remember, but I was watching it and I said, yeah, that's me doing what I was trained to do, exactly what I was trained to do, but I don't remember that. And that's another reason why I think training's so important, because
to speak on that, like I do the same. I think about it a lot of the times, because so much in my career, I just go, I'm going to be a robot or do my training and rely on my training, because this is how I've trained. This is how I've done it. I'm not going to like ad lib or make stuff up in this scenario, because it's like, I've worked through many scenarios like this. So yeah, we do. I mean, for sure. But, you pointed out, for anybody watching the show, so the sheriff's office is doing the investigation. A lot of agencies will bump up a level or two. Sometimes they may, like mine hands it over to the state. Even though I'm a city jurisdiction, mine goes all the way up to the state. But yeah, a lot of times agencies will hand it over to the sheriff's office. And that was only recently, within the last 10, maybe 15 years, but really more like, well, it's been a long time, 10 to 15 years probably. But that because our agency used to investigate our own shootings. So yeah, that's something that's, within the last 2 decades. I
think initially the Division of Criminal Investigation, the Wisconsin Department of Justice, that agency, they were going to investigate my shooting, because I remember there was a DCI agent at the police department shortly after my shooting. But I also, and I'm not sure if this has anything to do with it, but I know it was between the time, or right at the time, where they were changing it from officer involved shooting and OIS to officer involved death. And I'm not sure if that, because now they call it an OID, officer involved death, and not an officer involved shooting. So I don't know if
Because
that
you
had
could also have a asphyxiation, asphyxiation, somebody die in custody. Those
right,
are all there. That's the same classification, basically.
right.
Like somebody on drugs or something like that in the back seat while you're driving them to jail, and then they die, and it's like so they investigated. Just it kind of gets the same protocol, I'm assuming.
Right, just like a vehicle pursuit too. If the suspect vehicle crashes and they die in the crash, then So
Yeah.
there
Okay.
was a DCI agent at the police department. They didn't end up investigating my shooting, so I'm not sure why. But you're absolutely right. A lot of times the state takes over and investigates it.
So, and then would similar because like I think right now I have not been in a shooting, knock on wood, but with some incidences, with most incidences now, especially with body cam, they allow us to review the body cam prior to any investigation or any questions. So that was sort of what they were allowing you to even see Walmart's video
Right.
of the situation because you haven't mentioned it, but you probably didn't have body cams
I
in
did.
2016.
Yeah, I did not have a body camera. The second officer that arrived, they had a new squad car camera system, and they had a body camera, but I did not. And yeah,
Oh,
they
okay.
let me look at the Walmart video, and we listened to the 911 call and reviewed that kind of stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So smart to, it's nice to be able to review that just to reaffirm what you're going to say and that kind of thing, because, your eggs could be a little scrambled after it. So we'll take another quick break and then we'll continue on with the story. I mean, it could happen to any of us any day with some of these calls. So we'll be right back. What's in the cup? Guys, what's in my cup? Blackout Coffee Company. We joined up with them. I've been drinking it and I enjoy it. And I think you may enjoy it as well. So you can go over to our website and click the link, or you can just go to their website, blackoutcoffee.com, and use our coupon code to get 10% off. The code is DSP10. So go over, check it out. All right. So you're working your way through the investigation and now you're having to deal with that you killed her, that she's dead. And so how'd that all kind of go out for you?
So I had 30 days off, administrative leave, which is
Wow.
common, it's protocol. And I don't remember much of that 30 days. I mean, I'm sure I enjoyed sleeping in and staying up later than normal, but I know I did start drinking and as one of my poor coping strategies. But after a month, I was cleared by the district attorney's office. They said my shooting was justified. And I never thought that I wouldn't go back to work. I always knew I would, and I wanted to. I never thought that I wouldn't be cleared. I knew that I did the right thing. I never second guessed myself. So that just wasn't in I just never thought that. And when I went back to work, soon after I went back to work, then the family filed a lawsuit against me, the police department, against Walmart. And I knew that was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. And I remember I was on duty out, on patrol, and I heard the sheriff's department drop, the process server drop it off at the police department. And then I went in and I was told, yeah, we're getting sued. And but after a year, the family dropped the lawsuit against the police department, against me, and then strictly went after Walmart. They didn't get a penny out of the police department, and they strictly went after Walmart. But my poor coping started while I was on my 30-day administrative leave. And, I started abusing alcohol. And, before my shooting, I collected wine. But after my shooting, I sucked down that wine really, really quick. And I went to liquor real quick because it got me where I wanted to go a lot quicker. And, I'm wearing an exterior vest carrier, and this patch can be removed. But some of my coping strategies were alcohol, casual sex, and drugs. And what I mean by abusing alcohol is I just didn't have a 6-pack or a 12-pack of beer. What I would do is I have a simulated wine glass here. I would pour a glass of wine, and then I'd add ZzzQuil or I'd add NyQuil to it. I'd make my own cocktails. I'd buy these pink allergy pills at the dollar store because the pink stuff's the good stuff. There's a method to this madness. If you take too much of this, you get, really sleepy, you start feeling high, and you feel good. So that's what I would do. And there was one time I reached into the medicine cabinet and took my daughter's prescription cough medicine that had codeine in it. And it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, and I slept the day away. There were times I have a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka. I would drink this in 30 minutes or less, sometimes straight from the bottle. Sometimes I'd pour it over some ice. I wouldn't make a mixed drink. I would just drink it right away. And I would black out and sleep the day away. I was a drunk. And I was
and that was just during your 30 days of admin leave.
That it slowly started happening. Yeah. And then it continued for years after that. Another thing that I would do, no matter what social event I would attend, even if it was grocery shopping, I would stop by the local gas station and I would buy 2 or 3 of these Fireball cinnamon whiskeys. These guys were my best friend. I freaking love them. What I would do is I'd drink 2 or 3 of these right in my car before I even left the gas station parking lot. And I'd throw the empty bottles in the back of my SUV, or I'd throw them out the window when I'm driving to my destination. And I would always rationalize that it would take about 30 minutes for the alcohol to start affecting me. And then by then I'd be wherever I was heading to. But that was wrong. I was so lucky that I didn't crash and kill somebody, that I wasn't arrested for drunk driving. But I didn't care. I absolutely didn't care. I was trying to numb, trying to escape, the depression, the anxiety, all that stuff. And when I talk about casual sex, I would meet women online strictly for sex. It was a mutual agreement. And, it's like the alcohol, sometimes in 30 minutes or less, we'd be having sex. And I had a routine that when women would come over to my house, what I would do is I would drink a large energy drink like Red Bull. And then I would have 2 of these little vodka bottles because, hey, the extra Red Bull gives me the energy. The alcohol takes away the inhibition.
Smooths you out, yeah.
Right. And then I'm feeling good. And on top of that, I would buy special condoms, Trojan condoms that desensitize the sexual feeling. So the sex.
Yeah. I mean, you're a man with a plan.
Right.
Allegedly.
And it felt good. Sex was great. It's sex to me is special. It's something you share with somebody that you love, you're committed to, you care about. But when I was coping this way, it was just about feeling good. It was like chasing that dopamine high. And I remember laying in bed with a woman one time thinking, Adam, you got to stop this. I started not liking myself. I was like, I just didn't like myself. And I knew I had to stop. I knew it was self-destructive and risky behavior, but that still wasn't enough for me to stop. I mean, I would even worry about, what if I get an STD? What if I get her pregnant? But even all that wasn't enough for me to stop.
Right.
And then I talk about drugs, prescription drugs, like I mentioned, having my daughter's cough medicine with codeine added to my cocktail. But then I also tried marijuana for the first time in my life. And a lot of people are like, come on, Adam, that's just pot. It ain't no big deal. But to me, it is, because all my life, I wanted to be an ERCAR man, a police officer. So I did what I thought was necessary to not do anything wrong, to not break the law. And I just didn't care. I smoked marijuana. I tried marijuana gummies, and I just didn't care. That was my poor coping. I was into.
And so during this time, you were still employed?
I was. Yep.
You were still employed. You're still an ERCAR man. You were still a police officer. Did drug testing, anything like that, or just something that you just decided to roll the dice and go for it?
Yep. I didn't give a shit. I just figured I'm going to do it. And,
so it speaks to the self-destructive nature of the poor coping mechanisms or poor coping strategies, to read your notes on your chest.
And another thing, self-harm. My chief was great. My chief at the time of my shooting, he was so supportive. Almost immediately, he reached out to the media and said he supported me. I actually have a framed quote that I found online. I printed it out. I put it in a frame, and it said that, I think he believed that he had no other choice. I support him. So he almost immediately told the media that, and that meant everything to me, because if you're having a crappy day and your chief supports you or your supervisor supports you, that means everything. And this was on my desk until I was terminated, and he was.
And it's important for anybody listening, because it's not just, it's one thing to say it behind the scenes or behind the curtain of the hospital, if you're sitting there and patting you on the back. It's another thing to get out in front of a microphone or to get on social media as a boss or as a chief and say, I support my guy or girl, my employee, my officer, my friend, whatever. It's important to get out there and do that, because it lets not only you, Adam, it lets your coworkers know that,
right.
Listen, if I go out there and I risk my life and I do my job, and it just so happens that I end up taking a life or hurting someone, that my chief or my bosses have my back until they otherwise know that it was illegal or wrong,
Right.
but until that time, they've got your back, and you need to know that for your mental health, and you need to know that for the morale of the troops. So I got a grandstand for a little bit.
Right. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And my chief was genuine, because there were times he'd be sitting in his office, either talking to somebody in person or on the phone with somebody, and I could be down the hall or around the corner, and I would hear him defending me and supporting me when he didn't even know I was there. So I knew he was genuine. I knew he wasn't bullshitting. So
that's great.
That means everything. But what I'm still shameful for is, there were times that I came into work and I couldn't understand why. My mind was just a mess, and I couldn't be at work. And I would go into his office and I would say, Chief, I can't be here because of whatever reason. And he would send me home, and he supported me. Like, take as much time as you need. He didn't roll his eyes and say, okay, I'll have to figure out who can work for you. But after I did that so many times, I think it was the stigma and, associated with mental health. I felt like I was running out of just being honest. So there was one time I made up a lie, and I have a 12-inch crescent wrench here. And this was during the 4th of July week. And I struck my knee many times, enough to cause redness, abrasions. And then I went into the emergency room, and I told the doctor and the nurses that I had fell down my back steps and struck my knee on a manhole cover. And they did x-rays, and they gave me pain meds, and they wrote a letter so I could get out of work, and they gave me crutches. And then I hobbled into the PD, and I lied to my chief and said, look, here's a doctor's excuse. I can't work the 4th of July. And I got off of working 4th of July. And that's just not me. I'm lying to the chief, to the man that totally supports me, the one person I knew absolutely supported me without question. But I made up a lie to get out of work, instead of just saying I can't be here because fireworks or loud noises are triggering me. And I'm sure it would have been okay, because it had always been okay. But I went to starting making up lies and making up these big hoaxes of how I could get out of work.
Wow. Was any of that also like drug seeking to get the pain pills, or did you?
No, I never.
Was that
never
just an added benefit?
Yeah, I never thought of that. Actually, never thought of that until now. It probably.
But I mean, did you use those pills?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure.
I mean, because you had the pain, because you beat the crap out of yourself. But did those pills roll into the one side of your vest plate? Did they run into the drugs part? Like, did you use any of the hard prescription drugs? I mean,
sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
And
okay.
and then there was one time that I didn't want to go to work, and when I was taking a shower before I even left the house to go to work, I was thinking of a plan of how do I get out of work today. And it was more towards the winter time. And I thought, there's a Burger King restaurant on the way to work. And then there's also a McDonald's on the way to work. So I took my shower, I got all geared up, and I went through the Burger King drive-thru, and I ordered a whole bunch of breakfast food and just ate the breakfast food, and washed it down with orange juice. And then I went to McDonald's and I did the exact same thing. And then I walked into the police department and played the sick employee and made sure everybody saw that I was, not feeling well. went into the police department's bathroom, propped the door, didn't shut the door all the way, made myself throw up and made some of the vomit miss the toilet. So everybody saw that I was sick. And then what happened? I got sent home from work. Instead of just going in and saying, I can't be here. I'm just feeling off. Something's wrong. I was making up these, I was like a drama queen. I was making up all this stuff. It's ridiculous.
How often would you say, like, what percentage of your days that you were able to work versus these, sick calls or fake sick calls? Like, what would you say was your percentage, of how it was happening? Was it like once a month, every couple weeks, once a week, or almost every day?
Maybe once a month, I'd say. I mean, there were some times that I would just call in and say, hey, I'm sick. I'm not coming into work. But that was basically because I didn't want to go to work.
Yeah.
And, but I think overall, probably 25% of the time was me calling in sick to work, and 25% was me making up some excuse. I mean, there were many a times that I went to work that I shouldn't have been there. I would jump in my squad car and I'd go hide somewhere. I'd hide behind a business. I'd park my squad kind of in an area where people would see my squad to kind of deter things, but enough where people would never come up and, flag me down or ask me for help or anything like that.
Yeah. Are you saying just because mentally you weren't in it, or were you otherwise like inebriated or?
No, I never crossed that line with being under the influence or drinking when I was on duty. I just wasn't in it. There were plenty of times that I shouldn't have been at work. I'd go to work and I'd go park somewhere, I'd hide somewhere, and I'd pray I didn't get a call. I'm like, I hope today's slow. I don't want to do anything. I'm sure not going to self-initiate anything. I just want to ride my shift out and go home. And I should have just went in and I should have just been honest. Hey, I'm not in the right mind frame. I don't get what's going on. Something, I feel off. I can't be here. That would have been the safest thing to do. But I think over time, with the stigma with mental health, I was just like, I got to go to work. I got to just keep going because it'll get better eventually. And it just didn't.
Yeah. So you're just, so you were afraid of getting that unfit for duty label, pasted on you or whatever. So when did you finally, or did you ever finally find that you were like not okay and that you could talk to them about it?
Right. Eventually what happened is December 28th, 2021, I was at active shooter training in an elementary school. And there was probably about 20, 30 other cops there. And I was seated comfortably like I am now. And we were watching a PowerPoint presentation about the different active shooters across the United States, over the years. And I started getting really uncomfortable, really hot, a knot in my stomach. And about a minute later, I reached up to my forehead and it was drenched in water and sweat. I was having a panic attack. But my first instinct was, I got to fight this and I got to hide that I'm going through this because I can't let anybody know here what I'm going through. But I really think it would have been okay if I would have told the instructor, hey, I can't be here. Something's not right. I'm not feeling right, because they all knew me. They all knew I was in a shooting. They probably would have understood it, probably would have been okay. But my first instinct was to hide it and fight through. And I did do that. And then I went on a couple days off, and then I came back to work New Year's Eve of 2021. And I started my shift at 11 a.m., the same time I started my shift the day of my shooting. And I was a detective at the time, but I was working a uniform patrol shift. And I got in my squad and I'm setting everything up. And then I thought, you know what? Forget it. I quit. I ain't doing this no more. And I don't think I wanted to quit being a cop. I think I realized that my poor coping over the years wasn't working anymore, and that I had to knock it off or I'm going to lose everything. So I reached out to a sergeant friend of mine, at the time. And I said, I want you to come with me to the chief. I'm quitting. I'm not doing this anymore. And he's like, hold up. You're not going to quit. I'll be right there. And jumped in my squad. And he was like, yeah, I'll come with you, but you're not going to quit. And we went and talked to the chief. Now, this was a new chief. The chief that was with me the entire time, that supported me after my shooting, he had retired after 30 some years. So I went and talked to the new chief with the sergeant. and they were both very supportive. They sent me home. The new chief said, take as much time as you need. Let me know when you're ready to come back to work. And I think it was about 2 weeks. And I called him and I said, hey, chief, I'm doing better. I'd like to come back to work. And he said, the only way that you can come back to work is I need you to take a fitness for duty test. And I'm all for it because I had started sharing my mental health experience 3 years after my shooting. I mean, I was a hypocrite when I was sharing it because I was still going through the alcohol, casual sex, and drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to have that image like everything was okay and like I was doing better, which I wasn't. Oh. But I was okay for going to get the fitness for duty test, and I scheduled the appointment. And the morning of the appointment, I remember driving to the clinic, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna lie. I'm gonna beat this test. I don't need no freaking test. I've been back to work and I've been doing fine. I've been getting awards and medals. I'm good. I don't need this. I'm going to beat it and just go back to work. But then when I got to the clinic and I'm sitting in the waiting room, I thought to myself, Adam, the only way you're going to get better is if you're honest. You have to be honest. And I did. And I have another patch right here. And what it is that I was unfit for duty. And I actually have the packet right here. And it was a 7-hour testing process.
Wow.
And once I got this, I remember reading through it and I started crying because it was an explanation of, 6 years of me just being a mess and why I was doing that. And it talked about may have problems with relationships, which I did. Maybe antisocials, which I did. And I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, PTSD, acute stress with dissociative features, and I couldn't go back to work. So I requested a 90-day leave of absence, and I started going to therapy 2-3 times a week. And I loved it. I felt like I was getting better. I knew I was getting better. The whole goal was to take 90-day leave of absence in hopes that I'd go back to work, after 6 months, short term. And I wasn't missing any appointments. I was doing well. I was doing better, and learning a lot about myself and learning how to cope positively and slowing down the alcohol and all this self-destructive behavior and negative coping. And this right here was a lifesaver for me because it explained everything. And I was also put on a safety plan because inside this packet, I did have suicidal ideations, and I was okay with that. Another patch right here says suicide, and that's the real deal right there. You can't come back from that. And like we talked about before the show, I have a complete plastic replica of my duty weapon. There's no working parts in this. But I easily put my gun to my head a dozen times. And I did it when I was intoxicated. What I would do is I'd remove the magazine, clear the chamber, take the round out. It's a 40 caliber Glock, Model 22 Gen 4. And I would put, it to my temple and I'd pull the trigger because I wanted to hear that metallic click. And I never thought that I wanted to kill myself. I never thought, you know what, forget it, I'm done. I'm going to do it today. But as I got healthier, as I got better and started learning about why I did certain things, there's really no other explanation as to why I did that. And a lot of people said, maybe you were kind of just planning. You were prepping to do it.
Yeah.
And what scares me the most is how many times did I do that when I was so intoxicated I don't remember. I very well could have, shot myself. And
you may have just messed up accidentally and done it, and then they just write it off as a suicide, of course, because they're going to be like, look, this guy's got a packet right in front of him that he's rereading and a couple of alcohol. So it fits. It doesn't take a detective to figure that part out.
Right.
And then you just.
I mean, I did have a lot of anxiety, stress, and depression during the whole period. While I was on that safety plan, I was okay with it. I was fine with it, but it's different when you're on it. It's different than when you're there for other people. Like throughout my whole career, I've been there for other people when they've been in crisis, and it's different.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, but it's okay. I understood. I needed that. One thing that was was pretty upsetting to me is shortly after I was put on that crisis plan, I was at home. At the time, I was engaged. That didn't work out. She wasn't very supportive of me speaking about mental health, about what I was going through. And a sergeant came out to my house and gave me a written order to immediately cease and desist speaking about my mental health when it comes to my shooting. I have it right here, and it says that you're instructing you to immediately cease and desist in the dissemination of personal testimonies regarding your mental health experiences, which reflect negatively on the police department. And it basically said more specifically, April 8th, 2016, your shooting, and basically told me if I don't stop talking about it, that I would get disciplined or possibly terminated. And that scared the hell out of me. And I didn't get it because I had been speaking since 2019 and everything was okay. And now I'm on a leave of absence, and now I'm told not to do that. And it scared me. So I shut everything down. I stopped talking. I shut my website down and everything like that. And now my 90-day leave of absence was coming up to towards the end, and my chief reached out and said he wanted to have a meeting with me. And I went and met with him, and he told me that the leave of absence was not going to be extended. It's going to be expired, and that I could either resign or I would be terminated. Yeah. And I was in shock because I just couldn't believe it. I had been there for 14 years. I had never been disciplined, suspended, anything like that. And now I'm given the option to resign or be terminated because of a work-related thing. And I thought it over, and I was like, I'm not quitting. And then I was terminated.
So what would you think? Because I've had a friend that went through similar. I don't know all the details, of course. I'm waiting to talk to him more one-on-one about that. But what would you think that the department, like, put yourself in the chief's shoes? Like, tell me why Adam isn't, why you don't want Adam to come back? Like, why do you think Adam can't come back to work?
Liability, mental health. Yeah. I know that they, the order I received, they didn't like the fact that I was talking about my poor coping. They didn't like that I was sharing that I was abusing alcohol and how I was abusing alcohol. I mean, that's stated specifically in that order. Okay. But I had been doing that since 2019. I had been helping other police officers. I had been helping other people. I had been speaking. Yeah,
this is pre the peer support movement. Or the law. This is kind of almost at like the cusp or the beginning of the law enforcement mental health movement. Back in the 2019.
Even before I went on a leave of absence, that chief said, "Hey, maybe you can speak a little more to supplement your income while you're." So it was just a shock.
He definitely got talked to, and somebody shed some different light, or fed him a different perspective, just not to defend him, but a different perspective, I'm sure, was brought up because how law enforcement talks, especially command staff and stuff. And so somebody probably put a liability bug in his ear. So I was just curious, wanted to kind of pick your brain about, if you don't know, we can speculate, because that's the best thing for the internet is speculation of exactly why.
Right. And many months later, I think it was maybe 6 months later, I spoke at a college near that community, near where I was a police department. And shortly after I spoke, I got a letter from the police department's attorney basically saying that, you spoke at this college and you provided unfactual information. And if you continue to do that, we're going to come after you. They basically said I told everybody I was terminated for my mental health. But I never say that. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at my story and know, hey, I was on a leave of absence for what? For my mental health. I was working on my mental health, and then my leave of absence was not renewed and I was terminated. So everybody has their own opinion, but and getting that letter, that scared me too. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to keep talking about it because I'm helping people. It's the truth. I'm not making this stuff up. Yeah. So, I mean, but I do. I wish I could have stayed there. I really wish I could have stayed at that police department and, went around the state talking about, my shooting, and these are the good things. These are what maybe could be improved upon and stuff like that. But it ended up being terminated, ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I would not be able to do what I'm doing right now if I would have stayed there. It just wouldn't have happened.
So I'll drop in one last commercial, and then we'll kind of move into like where you're at now and kind of what came from all that, and like as you're saying, a positive outlook on it. So we'll drop this, and we'll be right.
So that's why I built InkMD, to address a niche, a very real need for medical grade wound care for real wounds. Tattoos are real wounds. I don't understand why we continue to treat them differently. Nobody's bridged that gap yet. We're talking about relatively superficial trauma to the skin. The quicker it heals, the better. Especially with tattoos, because the amount of ink that's retained in your skin is dependent on that healing process. Real science, real medicine, with a very ancient and very personal art form.
Jump over inkmd.com and use DSP15 when you want to make a purchase. All right, we're back. And but yeah, so you got the cease and desist, while you were already doing speaking engagements, and kind of just said, hey, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep rolling forward. So what's happened from there?
Well, after I was terminated, I went home that day, and I didn't know what I was going to do. My dream job of being a cop was over, and I never thought I'd be a cop again. And because of what I went through, I never knew that I even wanted to be anymore. And I thought, you know what? Nobody's going to hire me. Everybody's going to hear this story, and they're going to be like, this guy's a nut job. We're not going to take the chance, because of liability. And my sister reached out to me, and she says, what are you going to do, Adam? And her name's Amy. And I said, I don't know, Amy. I'm not sure. And she goes, why don't you move down here by Mom, Dad, and me? And I was like, I don't have that much money. And she's like, you get down here, we'll take care of the rest. So that's what I decided to do. Is I moved 3.5-4 hours away and moved in with my sister. And
so if I can interrupt, were you so had you like already kind of cleaned up as far as drugs, alcohol, sex, magic, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I started slowing down a lot just because at the time I was engaged. So that structure, that stability helped me. And when the engagement fell apart, it was a pretty toxic relationship. It took me about 3 times to finally leave, and then moving down and moving away was finally the final straw. And I'm glad that I did that. That's moved in with my sister, and then I started looking for different jobs, not cop jobs, just any other kind of job. And I was not on medication. I was not seeing a therapist at the time, because when I was on a leave of absence and I was seeing the department psychologist, I was on medicine, but the psychologist believed that one of the side effects of that medication was that I was seeing things, hearing things, and smelling things that weren't there. And so he weaned me off it, and then that stuff went away. So when I moved in with my sister, she could see that I was still struggling, and I knew I was too. I knew it probably would have been in my best interest to get back into therapy, but I wasn't going to take the steps to find a therapist. My priority was finding a job. And I had multiple jobs. It just didn't work out. All I ever known was being a cop, and all my training and experience was police work. And every job that I found wasn't a good fit. And I remember one day my sister pulled me aside, and she goes, you know what, Adam, I want to tell you something. I don't want you to be angry with me, but I've been looking for a therapist behind your back, and I found one. And I wasn't angry. I was very grateful for her, doing that. And I do see a therapist now. Every Monday at 5 p.m., I'm sitting on the couch talking to my therapist. Her name's Sharon. I love her to death. It's great. Not only do we talk about my shooting, but we just talk about life, and it's helpful. So I got back into therapy. I also got back into taking medication. I take 20 milligrams of Lexapro. They're right here. Every morning I wake up, I go to the bathroom, I pop one of these Lexapros, and I keep going, and it's helpful. The combination of therapy and the Lexapro, it helps me. So I'm going to continue to do that as long as it helps me. And I would say probably about a year after being terminated and going back into therapy and getting back on medicine, I was like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good. And I still want to be a cop. I have a lot of training, a lot of experience. You know, my shooting, I want to help other people, help younger officers, veteran officers. And I started applying at police departments in the area. And I sent out 50 applications, cover letters, resumes. And the next day, police departments started calling, they started texting, they started emailing me, and they wanted to have interviews. And I was like, oh, wow, people really want me. And it made me feel good. And in a 2-week period, 3 police departments from 3 separate counties offered me conditional offers of employment. And I got to pick one. And that's where I'm working now. I've been back on the job for almost 3 years. In May of next year will be 3 years. I'm currently a captain with the Hartford Township Police Department in Wisconsin. And it's great because my chief now supports me 100%. I remember when he first hired me, we have a lake patrol. We also have a therapy dog, but Chief and I were out on the boat, and he said, you know, Adam, I know that you speak about mental health. I support that. I support you 100%. And if you want to keep doing that, go right ahead. And you can even wear your uniform if you want to. And I'm thinking, that's great. I mean, it's awesome, that kind of support. And I never thought I would ever be a cop again. I never thought that it would happen. And, you know, I'd say about 6 months after I was hired back into law enforcement, I was promoted to captain, and I'm living my dream again. And it's wonderful because I finally put myself first. You know, as first responders, we put everybody else first. We take care of everybody else. But I finally said, forget it. I'm done. I quit. I ain't doing this no more. It ultimately got me terminated. But I started taking care of myself and putting myself first and getting healthy. And that's the only reason why I'm back in law enforcement now.
Wow. Yeah. So it's smart. And that's a great tip for sure.
Yeah. And it wasn't an easy road. It sucked. I mean, 6-7 years, I was coping poorly. I was drinking. I was, you know, casual sex. I was prescription drugs, marijuana. I just didn't care. I'm very lucky that I'm here right now. Very lucky that I didn't. Is there any kind of mental health in your family, like mental health issues or anything, or are they just everybody else in your family otherwise average, to say? Yeah,
nobody's really normal.
Yeah, just like depression, anxiety, stuff like that, but nothing, not like
just your basics.
Schizophrenic. Yeah, nothing like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've found it interesting because down here in South Florida, we are in Broward County. We take a CIT. We take a CIT class, crisis intervention tactics or techniques. Who knows? It was a long time ago. But we take it. And one of the gentlemen that presents during the course is a Fort Lauderdale police officer, and he deals with the homeless population. But he sits in there like fully, like dressed up like a homeless guy, like just, you know, kind of scruffy clothes. He comes in and he's sitting there and he's talking. So you sort of catch his presentation in a, you know, we might have prejudgments while we're watching him talk and explain about homelessness and stuff. And he starts like stripping down his clothes, and ultimately he's in a police uniform. And he's like, yeah, hey, I'm a Fort Lauderdale police officer, and, you know, X, Y, and Z and all this stuff. And one of the things that a story he brings up, and I mean, I could be chopping this up, but this is how I remember it, was he talks about a Alaska state trooper that he met in Fort Lauderdale, so opposite ends of the country, that the Alaska state trooper had come home one day and had found his wife hooking up with one of his friends or colleagues or somebody, and just like snapped, like lost it, grabbed something, left, and never came back. Ultimately worked his way across the country, homeless, hitchhiking, whatever, and found himself in Fort Lauderdale just homeless. And so this officer, through talking to him, you know, got all that information, or found out about him and kind of looked him up a little bit, and did find out that, yeah, he was a Alaska state trooper and stuff. So it's just, I find it interesting, where and when, because as police officers, we have big traumas, we have little traumas, medium traumas, and it's like when and where that can cause a trigger for you, where it caused it for you. Whereas we might have two guys in our department that have shot multiple people and haven't had the same experience, but maybe have gone through the same stuff. It's just sometimes we don't know until there's a break, a psychological break, or a decline where they become to where they're at a point where they're unfit for duty.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I always find interesting in having conversations with police officers about their mental health and about mental health in general. So
I think one of the challenging things for me too is a year after my shooting, I was promoted to detective. So I was the only detective on the police department. And then that cumulative stress, I would go and I'd investigate suicides, and I'd go in and I'd investigate. We had a quadruple homicide, and we also had a time where a guy was huffing while he was driving his truck, and he ran over and killed 3 Girl Scouts and the troop leader while they were cleaning up garbage. And, I was trying to deal with my stuff. And then on top of that, other stuff kept coming at me. And I think that was pretty challenging. And, what really frustrates and it upsets me a lot too is when I went on that leave of absence, I was ghosted, and I've been completely ghosted by the officers that I've worked for. I love them guys and gals. We went on life and death calls together. They helped me move. They knew my kids. Some of them even came in a little bit early to work and knocked on my detective door and said, "Hey, Adam, can I come in and talk? I had a rough weekend." And I'd say, "Sure, come on in," shut the door, and we would talk. But then when I went on leave of absence and when I was terminated, it's like I was alone. Where is everybody? It's just really upsetting. I thought they were my friends. I thought they were my, colleagues. We worked together all the time. And then when I needed somebody, nobody was there. It's upsetting. It's still upsetting now.
Yeah, that speaks to what some of us understand is that you can become replaceable, or you are replaceable, and a lot of times you're just a cog in the wheel or in the mechanism, and then when they just change you out and switch you out. So it's why it's important for me to have external non-law enforcement based outlets, things that, this is an outlet. It's not necessarily law enforcement. I don't have to talk to cops. I talk to regular people too. But I like to have hobbies. I, over my shoulder, have the Star Wars helmet. So I do that. Cool. Dress up in costume, go to children's hospitals, different special events and stuff like that. And most of the people aren't cops. They don't know who the hell I am. I'm just a stormtrooper. So it's important. I feel, and I've had stuff like that throughout my career to help bring me away from what I was doing at work to a totally separate, without necessarily drinking or masking it or hiding it behind a bottle or pouring my problems into a bottle. Other remedies or things that you've done through therapy. You've done EMDR and other type of therapeutics like that. Aside from just Lexapro, you've done other therapies to help. How's that worked out for you?
Oh, it's been great. EMDR was a game changer for me for some reason after my shooting.
What's that stand for again?
Eye movement, resuscitation, and reconfiguring or something like that.
Okay, that's right. That's the one where you're looking into it and it's going into your. It's like in your eyes. Yeah.
Yep. You follow a light back and forth, and that was huge for me because for years after my shooting, I always thought that I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough, and I didn't realize that I was thinking that, and. During my career, I've always prided myself in being able to talk people down and not use force. In the almost 24 years of being a cop, I've never pepper sprayed anybody. I've never used my baton on anybody. I've tased people probably about a half a dozen or so times. I've never used deadly force, and I've always been able to talk people down and not use force. And this was an entirely different incident, and this was necessary. I did what I was trained to do, what was necessary at the time. But for whatever reason, I continued to think that I wasn't good enough, and EMDR
Yeah.
made me realize that that's what I was thinking. And so that helped. I also did biofeedback, DBT, psychotherapy, which is talk therapy. All of that combined was helpful, and it
Where do
got
you
me
get
to
where do you get stuff like that, or like where do you get like where do you find that?
EMDR now. I continue to do EMDR on and off with my therapist now.
Okay.
You have to, the therapist has to be trained in that. You can, if you're researching a therapist, they'll say right there if they're trained in EMDR or if they're trained in biofeedback or other things. And it is important, and I didn't know this at the time, but it is important to find the right kind of therapist, the right kind of
Yeah.
therapist that specializes with first responders, that specializes with different traumas. Because I did go to therapy right away after my shooting, but I just saw a regular therapist. I didn't know there were people who specialize in certain things. And I remember the first time I went and sat down with the therapist and kind of vented and talked about certain things for 45 minutes, and it was great. It felt great. But then after I left, I thought that was a complete freaking waste of time. They have no idea what I'm going through. And so I would go for a couple months and then take the summer off and then go for a couple more months. And then finally I just stopped going because I'm like, they don't get it. They don't understand. I'm wasting my time. And I just thought that if I would continue to do what I'm doing, go to work, do my normal everyday stuff, it'll all fall into place. It'll be great. It'll work its way out, work itself out. But it didn't. And I needed the right kind of help. And that's so important. It's so important to find the right therapist.
And you were going through this years ago, and nowadays I know, because I've spoken to a few of them on this show, and I know them personally. There are organizations for anybody out there listening that is dealing with things like this in today's day and age and doesn't happen to know. South Florida, we have Bleeding Blue Incorporated. They've been on this show. They can connect you instantaneously almost with with career competent therapists that are licensed, that are vetted through their organization to be versed in first responder stuff, firemen, veteran type issues, things that we see that aren't necessarily what the average person sees. To talk about the compounding nature, another organization that goes across the country, Overwatch Collective, very good group. They can, and these groups can also do things through charitable donations to help fund officers that maybe your department doesn't cover it, or the department shrink isn't the person for you. And so the department will only send you to their person. And you're nervous about that because you don't want the department you feel that person's compromised, and you don't want the department necessarily knowing. You want to kind of feel it out for yourself first. Speaking through somebody that hasn't done it, but I know stories of people that, they just don't feel like the department is going to look out for them, whether they talk to their own shrink there or not. You can go seek help. So there's just a little public service announcement for anybody, hanging out watching this, thinking, I know what Adam's talking about. And if you haven't seen anybody yet.
Yeah, you're spot on, because I went to the police department psychologist, and although I liked the guy, I trusted him, there was still that little bit of me like, is he really on my side? And he told me, I'm here for you, Adam. I want you to get better. I'm here to help you. But then I'm thinking, but you're still answering to the police department. So I
somebody who's paying your bills.
I mean, I just said, hey, this is who I got to see. So let's get going, and let me try to get better. But there was that little bit that thought about just what you said.
Yeah, exactly. So as a captain and advocate for mental health in your current role, what type of policies and like cultural shifts would you give to departments? Because I mean, you're in an administrative role now too, where you can help shape policy within your department or give ideas even here about like what they need to, like departments need, what they need to adopt to like kind of prevent the stigma that we've talked about.
I think what they need to do is they need to address that stigma. They need to let everybody know that it is okay to talk about your mental health, that you're not alone, that you don't have to suffer in silence, and not just say that, but, walk the walk like my former chief did. He was supportive of me. But then I would hear him defend me when he didn't think I was around.
Yeah.
I think they need to establish a policy that supports mental health in a way that if an officer is struggling and an officer needs help, they can immediately reach out to anybody and get that help, and not have their thought process be, well, if I reach out for help, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be suspended. I'm going to lose my livelihood. I'm going to lose my job. Then I'm going to lose my house and my family. If you're struggling, you shouldn't have to think about that. But that is part of that thought process, because if you've been a cop for 1 year or 20 years, it's like, this is all I know. This is what I love to do. And so many things fall on my job, like taking care of my kids and groceries and my boat payment and my car payment. And I'm going to lose all of that if I reach out. So I'm just going to take care of it myself. You shouldn't have to think that when you're struggling. You should be able to reach out and get that kind of help. I know it's easier said than done. I think it takes the whole department to come together and say, our department is unique from other departments. That department has these many officers or these many deputies. This is what works for us. What works for us? Let's do that. But I think leaders, they need to lead by example. They need to show that if you reach out, it's going to be okay. And I'm not going to be, perceived as a liability if I say, hey, I'm struggling and I need some help, because that's what a lot of officers, firefighters, paramedics now think. I mean, I speak with a lot of them, and they say, yeah, we want to ask for help, but we know what's going to happen. They're going to slowly find ways to get rid of us because of the liability. And once you reach out for help, you're done. So
you're just on your way out.
Yeah. And they might start nickel and diming you to death until you're gone out of the PD or out of the fire department or out. Yeah. It's different for every police department. They need to come up with something that works, but it needs to work. And leadership needs to show that it's okay to get help, and that they will be supportive, and that they care about their officers, and they just don't say they do. They actually do.
Yeah. Just stop with the lip service and actually put it to action and put it to work. Right. I think it's good to try to, bring forward some other stuff that's aside from, our normal training. One of the things you mentioned boats and stuff like that. I think the financial training, because we got to step back and look at what some of these other stressors are for us. Obviously we know the news, the stuff we do day in, day out on the job, but let's also talk about our financial stressors, oh man, we just had an accident, and, we're going to have our third kid that was not planned, and our other two kids are in high school, and now we're having a whole brand new kid, or just bills, the guys that constantly work off duty details and pick up every overtime shift to where they're working 60, 70 hours a week, also while maybe being a detective and on a call out schedule. And so, trying to teach us financial responsibility and financial intelligence, so that's not a stressor that we're worried about. Oh crap, I shot somebody, I'm on admin duty, I can't work overtime, I can't work details, now we got to create a GoFundMe, and now I'm ashamed, or whatever. I was doing my job, and now the union created a GoFundMe, putting my business out there, and people on social media, so teaching us some financial responsibility and intelligence, so that we're prepared for a problem. I remember the pandemic kind of made my wife and I think all right, look at all these people losing their jobs or getting let go from their jobs. Thank God I worked for the government, and the government needed to be out there in full force during the pandemic. But do we have a 3-month savings to cover our butts and our bills for 3 months if I lost the job, or if we both were out of work? That kind of thing. I'm talking kind of the Dave Ramsey method, for anybody that is familiar with that. So I think that's an important thing too, when it comes to your mental health, is because I know finances have always been a stressor for me. And since I've been doing that, it's really taken a lot of stress off my shoulders in thinking financially. And now with me going into retirement, I'm not worried about it. I'm not concerned. I'm not like, oh my God, I need to jump back into a new job. Like, I'm a 43-year-old guy. I need a new career. I need to go work somewhere else. I don't, so, I mean, that's, I'm proud of that, but but I don't think many of us are like that. And so I think it's important. That's one of those things as a training tool that I think we should bring in to departments. I'm just spitballing. I wrote the question down, but I think I'm kind of answering part of it myself too.
I agree 100%, Justin, because when I went on a leave of absence, I received no financial support. I didn't receive short-term disability pay. I didn't receive workers' compensation pay. I received nothing. I had to file for unemployment to get a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And while I was going to therapy 2-3 times a week, I was applying for other jobs and interviewing for other jobs, even though I knew, at least I thought I knew, I was going to go back to my cop job. But I received no financial support except from unemployment. When I was terminated, I was really screwed. I had nothing. Should I have had a better savings? Yeah, absolutely. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, while you're going through that. But ultimately, about a year and a half after, I filed bankruptcy because I couldn't catch up to my bills. And financial, that's so important because you never know what's going to happen. You never know if you're going to lose your job. You never know if you're going to get disabled or involved in a shooting where everything is turned inside out and upside down. And then it's like, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my rent? I mean, I struggled with that. Luckily, at the time, I was engaged and living with my fiance. But after that, I had nothing, and I had to file bankruptcy. I mean, it was a credit killer. It just killed my credit, and it took me forever to finally get back on track. And I wish I would have paid attention to that way before my shooting.
Yeah, definitely. So I got two more questions or two more topics. What's healing look like now for you? Like, what do you do for yourself? Because you're not immune to it. You're not perfect, I would assume. So what do you do to heal now that, drugs and alcohol, sex may still be around, but not the bad side?
Right. Yeah, sex is still around, but it's in committed relationships, and it's not just casual. The alcohol, I still drink occasionally, but I don't drink alone and by myself. I drink in social events, and I limit that. What I do health-wise is I eat healthier. I go for a walk. I enjoy exercising. I've lost a lot of weight once I got back to getting healthier and starting enjoying stuff that I like to do. Because all that stopped after my shooting. Everything stopped. And, my family lives close to me now. My sister and my 3 nieces live close to me, so I get to spend holidays with them. And, like I mentioned, our boat patrol is great because you're kind of like out there protecting paradise. I mean, beautiful weather. You're on the lake. You're getting paid for it. It's great. But I started taking care of myself. I started setting boundaries. If I didn't want to do something, I would say no. I still feel guilty at times because I'm a people pleaser and I don't like telling people no. But I had to start doing that. I had to start putting myself first because that's the only way I'm going to get better. And I'm okay with that kind of stuff now. I like hiking. I like long distance walking and kayaking. And I just start putting myself first more than I ever did before. And that's what keeps me going to therapy. That's helpful. Being honest with myself. And if I'm struggling with something, trying to figure out why I'm struggling with it. If something triggers me, try to figure out why and learn from that, not just pushing it down and ignoring it, because it doesn't go away. You're not going to get better if you keep ignoring it. So I'm a lot healthier now. I do a lot of mental health outreach through Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma, by being on podcasts and just sharing my experience. Something that in December will be our 2-year mark at the police department. It's something that I established called Mental Health Mondays. And the first Monday of every month, I share somebody's mental health journey on the police department's Facebook page, in the local newspaper, and on the newspaper's website. And during the month prior to when it comes out, is I sit down with somebody, a member of the community, and they share their mental health journey with me, and we type something up and we share it with the public. And I think that's a great program because it bridges that gap between law enforcement and those who struggle with mental health. It also shows that, hey, we're just like everybody else. We're not perfect. we struggle also. And it also, you build that trust with the community and work
That's
together.
smart. Yeah. It's good. And I think it's good. I think it also would be good for you to maybe run some other officers into that. Cause I don't know what you guys' mental health calls are like, but I feel like, cause I was off the road for, I mean, close to 14 years working as a school resource officer and then in the community resource PIO section and stuff. So when I got put back on the road, the road was a different world. Like before we used to be chasing bad guys, setting up perimeters, purse snatchings, robberies, burglaries, all that kind of stuff. And now it's just not like that anymore. And now all it is, hey, there's a bum sleeping outside of the Walgreens. Can you go move him? Well, that guy's going to have a sprinkle of a couple different mental illness problems, sure, possibly a high likelihood. Or you've got the calls of, it's not really a domestic. It's just, hey, you need to come here and Baker Act my niece. I mean, I think, do you guys have Baker Act or mental health holds, whatever you guys call them? I know some states call them different things. So, it's people just calling like an on-demand hospital service. Like we're going to come and just throw a straitjacket on somebody. And I'm consistently reminding people that we can't just do that. Right. Yes, we are allowed to, but we're an arm of the government and we're seizing someone's their right to freedom. So we have a scope that we have to work within. And if they're not in a crisis, they're just being kind of a pain in the ass, or they're having a bit of an argument with you. I'm not Baker acting them and taking them to the hospital that you guys are going to have to work on this, or, something, it's just a lot of things that we have to do. And, so we deal with it. So going back to like what you were talking about, how people in the public, that's really interesting to let your community know that there are other people in the community that struggle with mental health. Obviously, first responders, we talk about it a lot now on podcasts and social media and stuff. Still very, very much just tip of the iceberg explaining stuff. But I think the community doesn't necessarily understand that, one of their neighbors may deal with something, and sometimes it's a little personal, but I think opening up and showing community members that there's more people like them is kind of a good thing.
And I think it's pretty cool, because I was in a retail store in downtown Hartford, and somebody recognized me. I was off duty, and they're like, "Hey, you're the mental cop." And I'm like, "Yeah, kind of." They recognized me for Mental Health Mondays, and they're like, "We read it, every time it comes out in the paper. Keep doing that. My son, my granddaughter, they struggle with this." So that's great, having that connection and showing that, yeah, we may be the police, but we're so much more. We can be there for each other. We can fight the stigma together and work on, making things better together. And it's a great,
I mean, I get frustrated because I'm like, look, we're not social workers and stuff, and we get the calls. We're the first line, and somebody's like, well, why do you get those calls? And I go, because we're the big badasses with a gun and a vest that are supposed to be working out and supposed to know all the tactics. But, right, people got to understand that we a lot of times don't know. Right. I mean, we're going to always get called to them. So we may as well have a good understanding of all this kind of stuff. Even though I don't think that we should always get called to them, but ultimately, nobody really knows. And so who are you going to call? Right. So for the last one, I kind of like to ask a question based on, you have a long career. What's something that's sort of something that you do all the time that's like either a quirk or a superstition that you do as a lot, like if you were a baseball player, you'd hop over the foul line and just not touch the foul line. Are you superstitious? So is there something that you've done for your entire career that is just something? Tell me a little bit.
Yeah, I am superstitious. When I'm driving in my squad car, turning the volume on the radio up, I never put it on volume number 6 or volume number 13, because I see those as like unlucky numbers. I do the same thing like on my portable or on the squad radio. So those kind of things. Yeah, that's
okay. So it's something you've done pretty much from the get-go.
Oh yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
All right, cool. All right, cool. So yeah, it's kind of a little extra like off the topic that I like
Like
to
that.
sort of throw to people and see if they have anything different. So I've never heard anything like that. Mine's always been like I try not to ever carry anything in my right hand because in the academy they our instructor busted our balls because my gun's on the right side, so it's always if they ever caught you carrying something in your right hand, and I've carried that kind of to this day, and even off duty, like I'll grab all my grocery bags with my left hand if I'm leaving the cart in the store, and my right hand's available in case I need to blast anybody in the parking lot.
They did
So
that to us in the academy too. You couldn't have anything in your right hand. You couldn't have anything in your right pocket.
yeah,
Everything had to be in the left. And we'd go into the academy and they'd check. Turn your right pocket inside out, and if you had something,
yeah.
watch
Push-ups.
out.
Here you go. Here you go. So, all right. Well, so give me the information for the description, and so anybody can hear it or watch us talk about it. And then obviously if there's any way they can follow up with you or follow you on social media and stuff, I'll put that down in the description for YouTube and Spotify and Apple. So where can people find you?
You can find me at stopthestigma.org. You can go there. My cell phone number is there, my actual cell phone number, not a business number. So you can call me, you can text me, you can shoot me an email if you want. There's a contact form there too. Please reach out. I mean, if you need help, if you need some support in any way, there's resources on that website. It's being redone right now, but everything is still workable. Or if you just want to chat, reach out to me and we can chat. If you want to share your experience, I'm here. If I can't find a resource for you, I'll find somebody who can. Just know that it's okay to talk about your mental health and you're not alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. There's so many people out there that are willing to support you, and not just because they're getting paid, because they're genuine and they do care about you and they want you to be okay. So.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah. And then of course you're also available to do any kind of public speaking engagements if there's any kind of conferences or mental health stuff too.
I am. Yeah. If you want me to speak,
cool.
Shoot me an email or give me a call. I'll be there.
Sounds good, man. All right, cool. Well, thank you very much. And I'll see you on the other side of this outro. But everybody else, thanks for checking out the episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a great...
Calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.